rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You're listening to Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton, and this is 87.9 FM. My name is Yusuf Shafi, and we will have having a program today in conversation with. I'm joined by guests from the RMC in Wolverhampton, Arten Lazari. We're going to be joined by PC Rani Gundu, and later on in the program we're also going to be joined by Zahid Shah. So all being well, we've got an hour and a half of fun-packed conversation, looking at community issues, looking at the issues that affect you, and also trying to work out how, as a community, we can focus on some of the key aspects of issues that occur within the Muslim community and the wider community of Wolverhampton. Let's first of all start off with the nasheed, something to start the evening. We've got Mahir Zain here, One Big Family. Let's start off with this one. And straight at the end of this nasheed, we will begin our conversation with Arten Lazari.
You could realize there's no difference between us two. We're part of one family, no matter how far you are, and even if we don't know each other. Oh, you and me and you, we are one. Oh, you're my brother, you're my sister. We're one big family. Just one big family. Oh, you're my brother, you're my sister. We're one big family. Oh, you're my brother, you're my sister. We're one big family. Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Brother Mahazain.
MashaAllah, that was Maher Zain with One Big Family. Welcome, Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton, 87.9 FM. We are now in the studio with Arten Lazari. Arten, how are you, sir? All well?
I'm fine. I hope the same for you.
Let's put your mic on, and then we can say it again.
Okay.
That's
Thank you for having me this evening.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Arten, you've been involved with a number of key initiatives, and one big and major initiative in Wolverhampton that you've been involved with is the Refugee and Migrant Centre based in the city centre. I'm sure most of our listeners in Wolverhampton will be aware of the RMC. Some of them may well have had interactions with the RSC with regards to their personal issues and concerns and services that you provide there. But I want to start us really going back to the early days when you yourself were a part of the foundation of the RMC and how it developed and what were the key services we were providing and how did you and the people amongst you at that time identify the need for that service, and then how did that flourish and grow over time?
The story of the Refugee and Migrant Center starts some 21 years ago. Before I talk about it, let's remind everybody that it's a charity, which means every single thing of the service we provide is free to the point of access for everybody that comes to our doors. So we are promoting here something that is free to everyone. But some 21 years ago, Wolverhampton started to receive the first asylum seekers through what was called the dispersal program. And myself, my dear colleague and friend Mohammed Mustafa, who is from Kurdistan, also arrived at a similar time. And soon after, we realized that, not necessarily in the most thoughtful of ways, but we realized that there was barely anything for this type of new arrivals in Wolverhampton. There was an organization in Birmingham, but not in Wolverhampton. And to cut a long story short, with help of well-wishers and especially friends and colleagues from what is known as the language center, what was known as the language center at the time, TLC College, based at Waterloo Road, we set up what is known as RMC. And that small initiative at the time, set up by volunteers, has now become an established regional charity, which is very well known and provides a very, very broad remit of services. At the time, though, to get back to your question, at the time we were trying our best to assist asylum seekers who are new to the area, mostly from the Middle East and from the Balkans, and they were arriving to Wolverhampton without knowing anybody here or knowing how the system worked or how to negotiate the asylum system and deal with home office at the time. So there was a variety of needs they had. Our initial services were structured around that need. And as those communities kind of progressed in what, if we want to call it for the want of a better word, in their settlement integration path in UK, so as they left the asylum system and became refugees and started to work and integrate, as they reached the point of family reunion and they needed assistance with that, and several other issues. At some point you get to the stage of applying for citizenship, and everything in between, at every crucial stage of their path in UK, at least for the first 10 years, RMC is there.
Excellent. That's really positive, and to learn how you've grown from those small, humble beginnings, based in Whitmoreens, I think it was, based at the TLC building,
Waterloo Road,
on Waterloo Road, and now we've actually got a centre which is based in. We've got a town city centre base, but we've also got an office in Walsall and an office in Birmingham as well. Let's just look back at the community that we were serving. So Refugee and Migrant Centre, by definition, we're looking at BAME communities. We're looking at people from outside of the UK. People who have been affected by issues relating to some severe international, for example, war, poverty, famine, all sorts of issues which affect those people in their lives before they arrive to Wolverhampton, before they had the service. But of course, when they come to Wolverhampton, there is all sorts of discrimination, racism, all sorts of issues around their personal mental health, as a result of what's going on here, but also as a result of where they've come from and the situations
correct,
they've been
yeah.
in. So, to be able to take those individuals, to be able to focus on their problems, whether it be issues relating to their immigration case, or whether they're wider welfare issues around their education, their ESOL support, their orienteering within Wolverhampton, making sure they've established they've got housing, ensuring that they or their children get access to training and education, and then health needs as well, because a lot of them, of course, have often, due to their mental health or other physiological illnesses, do need support with doctors, GPs, hospitals, and all the rest. You've really, in many ways, I think, touched lives. And in many ways, I think you've brought people to a point where they've become independent, established, well, developed human beings because of the input you've put in.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got 1,001 stories to tell us, but it would be lovely, I think, for the listeners to just hear maybe one story of an individual who we've taken them from the RMC and we've now got a success story where that person has gone on and achieved either in the world of business or the world of work or the world of private commerce or some type of setup. So would you like to share a story with us?
There are countless stories because if I can put a bit into context, figures sometimes.
Maybe I'm aware that some of our own staff who work for the RMC themselves were users and clients once upon a time.
There are countless stories because over the 20 years of its existence, RMC has assisted more than 50,000 individuals in the region. But I could go on and speak about now colleagues who have been extremely successful with us, or I could speak about people who are doctors or successful businessmen and so on and so forth. But something that has touched me on a personal level, I will not give too many details just in case the person's case is identifiable, but a few years ago, a person from a West African country was on the bus and they happened to speak to somebody who was a volunteer of RMC. That's how the initial connection was made. And the young woman that was a volunteer at RMC told them to come to us. And there was a lot of struggle and pain and sadness in that personal story because we were talking about somebody who had arrived here very young, very, very young, and in many ways had been exploited, in many, many ways had been exploited, and had managed to somehow survive without being able to join the mainstream, what some people would call illegal migrants. We call them undocumented migrants. We don't agree with the initial term, had managed to survive here for about 14 years. And you can only imagine the amount of, as I said, abuse, strife, daily struggle people have to go through in that situation. And to get to the point, after they started to volunteer with us, they gained a bit of confidence, they told us about their case. We managed to casework the situation, we managed to get them the leave to stay in UK. I remember the first time I was told that they had finally been able to get a GP. They had never had a GP in 14 years in this country. Long story short, the person ended up not only finding a very good job in the third sector in Wolverhampton and sustaining it for several years, but their mental health, their general situation has improved massively, and they also have championed others and are confident enough to speak about their situation whenever there is the opportunity to highlight the struggle of people who can come here and can be there but not part of the system, totally unnoticeable, unless something really drastic happens, unless they have a serious problem with the law, unless they have a serious health problem, we just don't notice them. So this was something that has touched me personally. But as you mentioned also, and thank you for giving that assist, 60% of the colleagues at RMC, there is over 80 of us are former volunteers. So, and it's plenty of success stories.
Of course, and that just, I think, tells of the importance of the work you're doing. You've got 80 members of staff who are full-time employed by the organisation.
Yeah.
So from those humble beginnings in Brit Marines, to be able to then have 3 large bases in the Midlands, in the Black Country and Birmingham, to be able to actually then serve such a wide and large, diverse area number of people, and to manage these 80 staff, we're now looking at a large multi-million pound organisation. And I'm sure there must have been a lot of struggles to get there. I want to focus a bit more on our listeners who are listening into this programme, who would possibly think, well, I have health needs, I have issues around my immigration, I have issues around my housing, I require support with my education, my training.
Yep.
I am a refugee, I am a migrant, I've recently come over from abroad. What's the first port of call? How do they make contact with the RMC? Where are you based, for example, in Wolverhampton?
So our Wolverhampton office and the headquarters of the organization are at 9 Waterloo Road, very central in Wolverhampton. Anybody of the categories you just described, so anybody who is an asylum seeker, a refugee, a migrant, not necessarily a recently arrived migrant, it could be somebody who arrived a generation ago and they still have issues that they need assistance with, is welcome to access our services. So that's our address in Wolverhampton, 9 Waterloo Road. The phone numbers and the online access is very easy to, you as simple as RM Center, Wolverhampton, and you will find the details. And sometimes they can simply drop in the next day, which, keeping in mind the times we are living in, RMC has sustained a face-to-face service within all the possible COVID-safe measures for the most vulnerable. So 4 mornings a week, if people want to drop in, get their situation triaged, they are very welcome.
Excellent. That's good to know. And of course, Waterloo Road is the big where the Methodist Church is, just past that, isn't it?
Within less than 100 yards of the Methodist Church. So 9 Waterloo Road. In this case, it will be at the very beginning of Waterloo Road, on top of a firm of solicitors called Talbot's.
On top of Talbot Solicitors. Excellent. Good. So most people know the Molyneux ground. So follow the Molyneux ground, head towards the city centre. And it's there
on your right.
On your right-hand side. The Refugee and Migrant Centre. This is a centre which is there for the local community. It is there for people who require support with immigration, require support with all sorts of housing, training, education, health needs. It is the first port of call for many, many people, and thousands of people have been through that door, and thousands of people benefit. Just to bring you back in, Artin, where are we going in the future with the RMC? What are our plans? But if there were any comments you want to just make.
Just a minor thing on a practical note. As Yusuf said already, most of our staff are as either former volunteers, and at least 75% of the colleagues are either refugees or migrants themselves or of migrant background. We're very likely to speak your language. There are at least 45 languages spoken on site in our three offices. So if you are worried about getting access to our services because yourself or somebody you know and needs help is not fluent in English, please tell them to not get discouraged by that and approach us as soon as they can.
So I'm going to put you on the spot there, Arten, because one of the things we all know from the world of management is that the CEO, like yourself, the boss of RMC, you should be able to do what your staff are doing. So if you're saying you have staff with 45 languages, I'm going to quiz you on 5 of them. Can you say hello in 5 languages?
If you wish. Obviously I can. My native language is Albanian, so right now I would say Mirë mbrëma, which means good evening. I happen to be fluent in French, and I can say bonsoir. I'm saying Mirë mbrëma right now. Sorry, I'm saying good evening, but bonjour in français, buongiorno in italiano, or ciao come gli italiani dicono, e poi I can manage a bit in Spanish, so buenos días todos.
Excellent, thank you indeed. That's brilliant. I thought I was just being cruel, but actually you've stepped up to the challenge, so well done on that. RMC in the future. it's done wonderful work. It's well recognised. It's a charity. Everything is free at the port of call. The organisation has flourished within Wolverhampton and Walsall and Birmingham, where the services being provided are well respected, and I think a lot of the community, the people who know the
Thank you
RMC,
for the kind
will say
words.
that. Well, I mean, that's why Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton are featuring the RMC, because from our point of view, we know it's a charity that is at the heart of changing lives. It's dramatically impacted Wolverhampton citizens in many, many ways. I mean, it as a charity, it's a major employer within the city as well, because there's a number of people who are employed by it. So from that point of view, I think there's a lot of credence that goes to the good work you do. But where do you want to see it going in the future now?
The priority for the foreseeable future is to be able to sustain an open door for the most vulnerable during a time when both social and social policy and law is likely to go against them and get tougher. But ideally, we hope to be able to sustain the broad remit we have, to be able to sustain all our projects in relation to housing and welfare and employment and education and citizenship and health. And most importantly, if we are able to reach even wider group of people within our area of operation, we will. But again, I'm probably being a bit cautious here. The priority is to stay in the good job that we have been doing over the last 15, 20 years.
That's excellent. That's really good to know. And from the point of view of Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton, from the point of view of the Wolverhampton Muslim community, I think we are all well wishers of the RMC. I think we've learnt a lot of good things and heard a lot of good things about the organisation in many, many ways. During the course of that interview, he sneaked in late, of course. I do have to mention that on the radio.
I do apologise.
Our community activist Zahid Shah has just turned up as well. I was just thinking, Zahid, have you got any questions or any comments that you would like to make on the RMC? Or
I'm okay, fine, thank you.
you're okay, fine.
I don't know enough, so...
Okay, no problems. That's fine. So, listeners, you're listening to Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton. This is 87.9 FM. My name is Yusuf Shafi, and we're joined in the studio by Arten Lazari from the Refugee and Migrant Centre. We're also now being joined by Zaid Shah. We're going to feature a bit more of Zaid Shah later on after the break. We're just coming up to the break now. So, what I want to do is put on a little bit of nasheed for you, and we will then catch you on the other side of the break in a couple of minutes, all being well, and then we'll continue with In Conversation with Yusuf Shafi.
Oh Allah the Almighty, Allahu Allah, protect me and guide me, Allahu Allah, oh to your love and mercy, Allahu Allah, Ya Allah don't deprive me, Allahu Allah, from beholding your beauty, Allahu Allah, oh my Lord accept this plea, Allahu Allah. Affeder günahı, Allahu Allah, alemin padişahı, Allahu Allah, yüreklerin ferahı, Allahu Allah, İşit Allah derdimi bu ahlarımı, rahmeyle bağışla günahlarımı, hayreyle hem akşam hem sabahlarımı. Hasbi Rabbi Allah, Allahu Allah, ma fi kalbi gayrullah, Allahu Allah. दिलों की जान है अल्लाह अल्लाह हस्बी रब्बी जल्लल्लाह अल्लाह अल्लाह मा फी क़ल्बी ग़यरुल्लाह अल्लाह अल्लाह يا رب العالمين الله الله صل على طه الأمين الله الله في كل وقت وحين الله املأ قلبي باليقين الله الله ثبتني على هذا الدين الله الله واغفر لي والمسلمين الله حسبي ربي جل الله الله الله ما في قلبي غير الله الله الله على الهادي صلى الله الله الله لا إله إلا الله الله الله Oh Allah the Almighty Allah protect me and guide me Allah Allah to your love and mercy Allah İşit Allah derdini bu anları Rahmeyle bağışla günahlarımı Hayır eyle hem akşam hem sabahlarımı Hasbi Rabbi Cenlallah Allahu Allah وتنها کونه الله الله بادشاہ وہ کونه الله الله مهربا وہ کونه الله املأ قلبي باليقين الله الله ثبتني على هذا الدين الله الله واغفر لي والمسلمين الله حسبي ربي جل الله الله الله ما في قلبي غير الله الله الله على النبي صلى الله الله الله لا إله إلا الله الله الله
Welcome back. Ramadan Radio 9 FM. You're listening to In Conversation with Yusuf Shafi. And before the break, we had a wonderful chat with Artan Lazari from the Refugee and Migrant Centre in Wolverhampton. And we heard about the wonderful things that the charity is doing in Wolverhampton and how they're now spreading their wings and going out in towards other towns and cities around the Black Country and Birmingham. And we wish them well. Great work, great charity, locally founded and locally developed. We now have been joined finally by all of our guests. We've got Rani Gundu, PC Rani Gundu, QPM, who's joined us as well. Artan Lazari is still with us. And we've also got Zaid Shah. Assalamu alaikum, Zaid. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam, Yusuf, and a big salam to the listening community and Ramadan Mubarak from me.
Khair Mubarak, Khair Mubarak. I want to focus this second half of the stint on yourself and just ask you a few more questions and try to find out about the man himself, the man and the plan, as they say. Zahid Shah, community activist, born and bred in Wolverhampton. been active in a number of different fields and different things. You're a qualified teacher, active sportsman, I know. Tell us about yourself and tell us about your current activities and roles. What are you up to nowadays?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's quite broad actually, but yeah, as you're probably aware, I will say that people like yourself and Ahmed Hussein from Goresbrook Road, inspiration for becoming a teacher. That's something I started last year because I love mathematics, and fascination for mathematics since I was a little kid. Decided to do a PGCE last year. I was told I wasn't going to be able to do it because I didn't have a maths degree, but I convinced the tutor after passing a couple of tests. Cut a long story short, maths teacher now and working in a secondary school in Cannock. I play sport. As you know, I love cricket. A big, massive cricket man, and a massive Liverpool fan. Right, and on top of that, I teach self-defense, as you're probably aware. So I've got quite a few strings to my bow, and as you're probably aware, community activist, and standing for election in St. Peter's Ward this year.
Okay. So, with regards to St. Peter's Ward, tell us about the key issues that you think are facing the people there. And we've touched on some of them when we were looking at our discussion with the RMC and how, the welfare issues, the immigration concerns, the housing, the health needs, etc. But from your point of view, spending time in the ward, living in the ward, what would you say are the most pertinent issues that you need to really think the community now need to focus on, and through this radio you want to create awareness about?
There's a lot of deprivation in the community, and you've probably seen there's a lot of issues with fly tipping going on where people have got no regard for the area. They are just dumping rubbish everywhere and anywhere. If they see a spot and it's clear, they just dump rubbish. They don't know who it is, and they disappear. And this is what's going on. So that's one massive issue. Being a teacher, education is a big concern there, and that needs to be addressed. It's something I spoke to Brother Shafiq and Hadayat about the other day, raising awareness. But we look at education and we think it's about GCSEs and A levels and having a degree. But what about education around looking after your area? What about education on your health? Obesity. South Asian type 2 diabetes is massive in our community. What about education on nutrition? And looking after yourself, and education on sports. So there's a lot of concerns there, and I feel that one word, education, can address those as well. And I think if you look at fly tipping as well, that is something that comes down to education as well. So if you can educate people in the right way, you can change your community.
Of course, and part of the key role that we all have, and this is what Radio Ramadan is really focusing on this year especially, is community development. Actually getting through the process of empowering people, allowing people to change their own lives. And a lot of the issues I think that you've discussed there really do impinge on people being self-starting, people being able to organize themselves in groups, organize themselves in community associations if need be, and be able to actually, number one, create awareness and identify the sources within the city and outside of the city, how they can actually resolve some of those problems, and then take positive action and actually do things themselves, get their hands dirty, as it were. As a community activist yourself, how would you see your role? What would you want to do to support that empowerment process?
Again, it's down to education, but I think with Marines, it's an amazing area. Culturally, it's very wide now, isn't it? Whereas before you might have just had Pakistanis and Sikhs and the Afro-Caribbean community, mainly Jamaicans. Now, if you look at the community, it's so vast, isn't it? With regards to, the brother here is Albanian. You've got Kurdish community. You've got Romanians. I can go on. The list is endless. And it's actually trying to tap into those different communities and different cultures, and sort of, trying to make them aware of how proud they should be to live in St. Peter's Ward as we were when we were growing up. I'm not saying that, I'm not having to go at people and saying that they haven't got that kind of pride, but it just seems to be, St. Peter seems to be a short-term venture for people. They come in, they settle down for a couple of months, 6 months, maybe a year, and they're gone. So it seems to be, let's start off here and then move off. I don't know why St. Peter's, but I'd love people to come in and stay here for, generations, rather than coming in for a few months or a few years. I think the Kurdish community have started to do that now. They've started to realise that this is, St. Peter's is their home, like the Pakistani community, and they're tending to stay, whereas there's still other communities that aren't doing that. They're coming in and they go. And that's reflected in the schooling as well, because I've spoken to local schools and they've said that, they get the Eastern European families coming in, the kids are here for about 3 or 4 months, maybe 12 months, and then they're gone. So it's very, very difficult to sustain, the level of academia as well, with regards to the schools as well.
So would you say we're looking at an issue around a lack of community pride?
Yeah, there is. There seems to be a lack of community pride, and sometimes there's a fear of addressing something. I was down Leicester Street the other day and talking to residents in that area, and somebody came and dumped some rubbish, and there was a shop owner there. I'm not going to mention who it was, and he approached the gentleman and he said, "Look, this is my area and this is my shop, and can you please take that away?" Because he educated him, and the gentleman apologised and picked it up and took it away. Now, whether he went and dumped it somewhere else, I don't know. But the main thing was there was a dialogue that took place, and it was positive dialogue, and eventually there was no argument. The guy got his stuff and went. So we need some pride as well for the area, and I think if people see things happening, they should talk. If they're scared to talk to that person or those people, talk to the police, or talk to the council, talk to your, representatives in the area, and address these issues. And I think when we start doing this, hopefully we can get St. Peter's back to the way it used to be.
Okay. And with regards to education, because you mentioned education a fair bit, how do you feel that the attainment gaps which exist for especially the Pakistani and the Bengali students, Bengali children within the borough as a whole, actually, we've got the statistics for that there's a significant attainment gap with regards to education of Pakistani and Bengali students.
Okay.
And of course, a lot of our listeners are from within that community. What strategies do you think, and it comes back to, I suppose, this issue of community pride we're talking about, but what strategies do you think you should employ in order to promote education and to reduce that gap in attainment?
Yeah, I think, let me just break that down further, because when you say education attainment, Pakistani girls are doing all right. It's the boys who are struggling, right? And the Bengali girls are doing okay as well. It's the Bengali boys who are struggling. So there's an issue around education with the boys within our community, right? And I think that needs to be addressed. Now, there's, fortunately, we've got, I'm not trying to plug Helping Hands here, but there's a tuition centre in Whit Marines called Helping Hands, run by the assistant head of Heath Park. And he's doing a wonderful job there. And I was talking to him last week, and I said, look, break it down, analyse to me who your students are. And he said 80% are from the Indian community and the 20% of the rest. And I said, what about the Pakistanis? He goes 5%. Now, that 5% probably isn't from Brit Marines either. It's probably from other parts of Wolverhampton, right? So if you want to address the attainment gaps, and there's a father or mother and they've got some cash spare and they want to invest, they'd rather go and get a koti in Pakistan, right? A koti means a house, right? Than invest it in their child's education. Now, for me, my middle son, who was very bright, but he didn't want to get his head down, I spent like £20,000 on his tuition over 5 years while he was doing his GCSEs, and he came out with 13 GCSEs. He was a bright kid, but he was just getting his head down. So for me, I could have gone and put a deposit down in a house and got another house, but didn't want to do that. I wanted to educate him, because that was more important to me. So I think people out there in our community, they need to start investing in their children's education, And I think once they do that, the attainment gaps will get closer. I'm a teacher, and you're a teacher. When you're teaching 30 children in a class in school, let's be open and honest here. Let's have this open and honest dialogue here, and let's be frank. How many of those kids actually leave that class learning something proper? Yeah? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So you need to do extracurricular activity in forms of, home intervention to actually educate and get these, youngsters up to that kind of attainment level.
What role do you think our local community venues, such as our community centres or our mosques, for example, have got to play in this type of debate? Do you think they're involved in the debate? And do you think to some extent they can push that debate along forward to actually create more awareness? I mean, people will take a view to what you just said with regards to, putting your own private money into tuition. And some people would say, well, it's the job of the state and our state schools should be responsible for these types of things. But irrespective of view, do you think that our community organisations, our mosques, our community centres, our other faith centres, are they involved in the debate? Should they be involved in the debate as well?
They should, and the thing is, I'm standing for election, and this is probably going to upset a few people, right? And I'd rather be frank than in the month of Ramadan. I'd rather be frank and put it out there. The mosques need to take more of a intervention hand. They need to help. They need to get people in, to the mosques, the youngsters from the Muslim community, and they need to educate them, because the Sikhs are doing it, the Hindus are doing it. Why aren't we doing it? There seems to be a little bit of a stigma around this, and I don't understand what it is. We've got a magnificent community centre at Bilal Mosque, and I'm not going to have a go at the Bilal Mosque committee because they have approached me and said, look, what do you think we can do to help the youngsters? But do you remember a few years ago, probably a little bit more than a few years ago, the UK Islamic Mission had an amazing they had this Sunday school, didn't they? And that Sunday school was really good because they educated children from a massive, broad range. And what they did was children actually, the attainment levels were decent at that time, right? And they stopped that. And I don't know whether that was because of funding or commitments or whatever it was, they stopped. But nobody from the community actually supported them to say, listen, let's carry this on. And that includes me. So I'm to blame as well. To say, look, why don't we just carry this on? This is great what you're doing. And then all of a sudden it was gone and everybody's going, okay, what's going on? And then attainment levels start dropping. So it'd be nice for them, for Waterloo Road Mosque, for Bilal Mosque and the other small centres around to get involved with this again and start, working closely with the community.
That's excellent, and I think it's a positive message we want to put out there. It's more about saying these are things that you can get involved with and work with. We're not criticising any community centre or any organisation.
No, we're not. No,
it's about saying how can the community work alongside these venues, and through those venues actually be able to empower those people to be able to develop themselves. I know sport is something which is very close to your heart. You have a programme here on our Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton all about sports and education as well. To what extent do you think we could use community sports to promote some of these issues and some of these problems we have, especially within the St. Peter's community?
Yeah, I think sport personally, for me, I mean, as you know, I look after myself. I train every day. I haven't got too much good to look forward to because both of my parents are type 2 diabetics, right? So I'm going to be diabetic at some point in the future, but I'm trying to prolong it by training and keeping myself as fit as possible. And I think what it is if you look at not just the Pakistani community, but if you look at young people nowadays, there are a lot of obesity, isn't there? So if we can, again, coming back to the mosques, when I was growing up, there was a Maulana Mashti Sahib. I don't know if you remember them, right? Mm-hmm. And he was amazing because he educated us, but then he also encouraged us to play sport as well. And this was a scholar of Islam, and he was massive into sport. And then when he left, another Molna came in, and he was also sporty and athletic. And they really encourage sport. And I think, the mosques have to do it. Now, let me just look at Islam, and you look at when you do the Hajj or when you do Umrah. There's a point during that sa'i where you run. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm not saying he's done it because of that. We know what happened, but there's some athletics going on there. Between a certain point within Hajj and Umrah, you have to run, don't you? Right?
Of course.
So if you look at Islam, it encourages fitness and health as well through activities like this. Isn't there a hadith from the Prophet, peace be upon him, to say that teach your children to swim, archery and horse ride, something along those lines?
I think you're right, definitely. Yeah. So the instilling of the importance of formal education needs to be there, but the importance of sports and recreational activities is just as valid and just as valuable. And I think that's really something, a message we
Healthy body, healthy mind.
Healthy body, healthy mind. Well said. Exactly. You're listening to Zahid Shah on Ramadan Radio Wolverhampton 87.9 FM. We're having a feature to look at the life and times of Zahid Shah. That sounds quite scary for you, no doubt, doesn't it? Before we go to our break, and I'm going to put on another sheet, is there any key messages, Zahid, that you want to put out to the community? Just a minute or so.
Yeah, the key messages are: have some pride with the community, stick together regardless of whatever your affiliations are, and if people out there will understand what I'm saying, and really focus on one word and education, and focus with education and the community, and work on your children, and push them and give them a guidance of where they should be going with their lives as well. Is that fair?
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Zahid Shah. We've in the second part of our show, Yusuf Shafi in conversation with. We've listened to in the second part we've listened to Zahid Shah talking about community issues, and in the first part we heard from Arten Lazari from the Refugee and Migrant Centre. We're going to go to a nasheed now, and after that we'll have a short break. After the break we're going to be joined by Rani Gundu, QPM. And we'll start off by asking Rani, what does QPM exactly stand for? But before we get to that, let's listen to a nasheed, and we'll see you all, we'll hear from you all and see you all on the other side of
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك صل على النبي وتبسم ده النبي تبسم وتبسم ده النبي تبسم اللهم صل عليه قلبي المتيم كلما صلى عليك وسلم ذاق السعادة مغرما يا سيدي يا محمد صلوا عليه شافع الأمة بذكر الرسول تشحذ الهمة يا ربي بجاه النبي أزح الغمة يا ربي بجاه النبي أزح الغمة قمرون قمرون قمر سيدنا النبي قمرون وجميل I've been hurting, 'cause I've been falling. I need your help. My heart is breaking, so tired of crying. Lord, I'm calling. I need your help. I don't wanna fight no more. I don't wanna fight this war. Oh na na, oh na na, oh na na na. I don't wanna fight no more. I don't wanna fight this war. Oh na na, oh na na, yeah. Astaghfirullah. Forgive me, Allah. I'm so broken, my wounds are open, my life is frozen. I need your help, 'cause people always let me down. I'm losing all my air right now. I'm suffocating, I might drown. I need your help. I don't wanna fight no more. I don't wanna fight this war. Oh na na, oh na na, oh na na na. I don't wanna fight no more. I don't wanna fight this war.
Inna alhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You're listening to Yusuf Shafi in conversation with. This is Ramadan Radio Wolverhampton, 87.9 FM. We were blessed with listening to a lovely nasheed just before the break. And in the course of this program, we've been talking to Artan Lazari. We've been talking to Zahid Shah. Arten was talking about the Refugee and Migrant Centre and the wonderful work, the charity that it is, and the wonderful work that they are doing in Wolverhampton, supporting BAME communities and refugees and migrants within Wolverhampton. We then spoke to Zaid Shah about his activities involvement with the St. Peter's Ward. And now we're blessed and joined by Rani Gundu. Rani Gundu QPM, I should add, very important to mention the QPM. PC, Rani Gundu, tell us, what does the QPM stand for, first of all?
Well, the QPM actually...
Can I ask you to get closer to your mic, please?
Okay.
Right up,
Is that
because...
any better?
Bit closer.
That better?
That's brilliant, thank you.
Okay. So the QPM actually stands for the Queen's Police Medal. So first and foremost, thank you for inviting me to your show.
You're most welcome.
And more than honoured to be celebrating the fact that I have been awarded the Queen's Police Medal. The Queen's Police Medal is the highest award that you can get in policing, and normally, I say the majority of the times, it's awarded to outstanding police officers, senior officers, and people that have attained high standards in policing and delivered the highest level of professional standards as well.
Well, it was a pride for me, certainly, when I heard you'd got the QPM, and because I've known you for many years, obviously, and I was very happy that you've been awarded it. But it was, I think, a pride for the whole community. The fact that one of our leading female police constables have been accredited with the QPM. But apparently you haven't had the chance to go to the palace yet.
No, that's correct, because I was actually on the Queen's Birthdays Honours list, which was announced in October 2020. And during last year, obviously, COVID came in. And what normally happens is they announce it to publicise it. And sometime later, you're actually invited to Buckingham Palace, obviously, and then you're awarded the actual official award ceremony. You attend it. But due to COVID, that was postponed, and obviously we have had very challenging and unprecedented times, so I've yet to receive the actual award, as in the actual medal
the ceremony.
itself.
The ceremony.
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. Let's take you back through your long and no doubt very successful career to you being obviously born and bred in Wolverhampton. Were you born in Wolverhampton, or were you born abroad and came in?
Right, I was definitely made in Britain.
Definitely
born and bred.
There you go.
So I am a daughter of Wolverhampton, a true Wolverinian too.
Excellent, good. So with regards to, there you are, in your early 20s, no doubt, sitting there thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? So what inspired you to say, I'm going to join the police force?
Right. So when I reflect back on my journey, this is going back straight after college and thinking about which avenue of professionalism was I going to follow. I think a lot of my inspiration came from my father. Now, he was, my late father, the role model within our communities, and certainly my role model, and definitely left a legacy in the communities. Now, you've spoken to Artel, and the work that Artel does in our communities is very similar to what my father, he was a legal executive, and he was very, very passionate about in helping vulnerable people with language problems, not understanding this culture, and he came over to this country very young himself. So being one of the educated persons within the communities, as a young child growing up, I watched how much he helped others, and that inspiration was definitely the first lights of knowing that I wanted to serve humanity as my mission in life. And the way that I was brought up, the moral and ethical code of conduct as well, it actually, looking at the police service, actually complemented what my values and beliefs were at that time growing up as well. So hence that's why I took up this profession of policing.
But this would have been possibly in the late 80s or early
It
90s?
definitely was in the 80s.
In the 80s. And no doubt, being a young Asian woman at that time, you would have faced a lot of discrimination, a lot of sexism, a lot of issues around personal safety. It must have been a very, very, I mean, we haven't got the time to delve into all of those issues now, but certainly it must have been a very brave decision at that time to say, I'm going to put myself forward. Because at that time, you didn't have any role models from within the police force, did you?
No, and policing is, even then wasn't the first career choice that an Asian would consider as well. So I think for me, the actual thought process was, why can't I be a policewoman? Why shouldn't I be a policewoman? It appealed to me. There was never any obstruction for me from my family, because that's the nature of the work that my father did anyway. It was serving humanity, doing the good things for society, and building on those community cohesion and integration, that you feel valued and respected within the communities that you live and work in. So when I reflect on what you're asking me now, is that when I joined, it was a very male-dominated white institution, and there was hardly any police women at all. And if they were, there was only a handful of them. And as far as ethnic minorities were concerned, again, there was hardly any. So, regardless of that, having been brought up in this country, one thing that I have stayed strong on is never forgetting my roots, never forgetting my culture, and valuing the diversity that we have within all of us. We all have talent, we all have a lot to offer for society as well, and the communities that we are a part of. So really important throughout this journey, looking back in the 20th century, we are now in the 21st century, police trousers hadn't even been invented for police women. We had skirts, but you know, it made no difference at all. This is about your self-pride and your self-focus on life. If there were challenges, if there were adversities, the stronger I became to actually say, rise above it. Keep strong and focus on why did you join in the first place. If you can have that determination and willpower to say that I want to do this and I want to achieve in it, nothing can stop you, but you've got to believe in yourself in the first place. So when I look at that time when I joined, yeah, they were just about getting, we had a police women's department, and if there were any jobs, the jobs were for the boys, and there were the jobs for the girls, which were the usual missing from home, the crossing the roads. We used to do the school crossings and things like this, very girly type of jobs. But times have changed, and remember too that the Equality Act only came in 2010. So you're talking about nearly 1986, 87 to 2010, nearly half of my service before we ever saw, obviously, equality of opportunity, 2010. And for any statutory law, it takes time for that to be embedded in as well.
Of course, of course. You speak very passionately, and I'm sure it's an inspiration to all listeners who can see that passion and see that delight you've had to serve, but the commitment that you made throughout your career. I'm trying to now touch upon more community-focused issues, trying to get our youth engaged with policing. Where do you think are the barriers? I mean, yes, you're right. Now there is an increased number of young people coming into the police force from the Asian community. But where do you think are the obstacles remain? What are the strategies that you think you can personally do, but the police need to do more so, in order to encourage greater recruitment into the police force?
So I am currently, in every recruiting campaign that we've ever had in the West Midlands.
If I can ask you to get closer to the mic, please.
So
Or bring the mic closer to you, that'll make...
Okay.
That's it, that's better. No, right up is better, because the listeners can hear you well then.
Okay. So every recruiting campaign that we've ever had since the 1986-87 era, I've been involved in. So I am a qualified assessor, mentor, coach, and reverse mentor as well. So in relation to what are we doing to support people interested in joining the police and what are the barriers? So I'm currently part of the National Home Office project, which is called Operation Uplift, which is to recruit 20,000 officers across the UK. So we have actually voluntarily taken on positive action, and positive action is about supporting those disproportionalities within the organisation of the 9 protected characteristics that we are not reflective of the communities. Yeah. So, say for instance, if we're looking for 50% women in the policing world to be 50% and 50% men, we haven't reached that target. So there's a disproportionality. Likewise with the other 9 protected characteristics as well. Having said that, what we do is as part of my role is supporting new candidates to prepare for the process of the assessments that they have to go through as well, and for them to seize those opportunities that we offer workshops to prepare them so they feel confident enough to be able to take them and be able to pass them. Because the way that we assess on the what we call the competency values framework, it's a set of values and competencies that they must be able to deliver on in their interviews. So it's not like your standard job where you can go for an interview, you'll be asked a series of questions and that's it. We have 4 different assessments and a fitness test that they must pass to be able to be recruited into the organisation. And sometimes even the fitness test can be quite challenging for the new recruits as well. The barriers I think is in the individual's thinking. There's no barriers. Anybody can apply if you've got 64 UCAS points. 64 UCAS points is that you must have a minimum of a GCSE maths and English or functional 2 level skills in maths and English, 2 A levels or a level 3. But those qualifications must equate to 64 UCAS points. Once you've been able to show that you've got that eligibility, then you have the other eligibilities that you must adhere to, which is like not having a serious criminal record and tattoos that are offensive. These you can find on our wmp.jobs website. But basically speaking, if you've got 64 UCAS points, you will be given support to prepare for your assessments as well. The first assessment you will do is what we call a values-based assessment, and that is 26 questions of multiple choice. You will be given 2 scenarios with 4 multiple choices, and with that multiple choice, you've got to choose one selection for what is the most right thing to do in that scenario, and one selection of which is the worst thing that you can do in that scenario. And that's for those 26 questions. Once you've passed that then gives you the actual lead on to do the other 3 assessments. The other 3 assessments are, the first one, it'll be the second assessment, is that you will get 5 questions. Those 5 questions are based on the competency values framework. That you can find on the College of Policing website. Those 5 values that you're tested on, you will have 5 minutes for each question. And in that 5 minutes, you've got to be able to articulate whatever the competency is that they're actually testing you on. Then you have another assessment, which is your report writing assessment. And that is, they will give you 4 lots of data, which you've got to read, analyse and create a report as if you're the police officer for that area, and give a report of what actions are you going to take.
So clearly it's quite thorough and in-depth,
very
the
much
recruitment process. I was just thinking there, a lot of listeners would probably think we need to be taking note of all of this if we are going to go into the police, and some of them may well have been put off by it. But I think the key thing to put out there is you shouldn't be put off, although there are these rigorous recruitment processes. It is fair, and there is support all the way through to ensure that those people who are interested in coming into the police can make it. And I'm sure you don't necessarily need to have the A levels. You can get your UCAS points through vocational qualifications and traineeships as well.
As long as they've got 64 UCAS
exactly.
points.
So which from an education point of view, I'm aware of the fact that you can do that through vocational qualifications and training as well. That's brilliant. That is really a positive thing that's going on. And with this new recruitment going on, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there who would be inspired, certainly by your words and certainly by the fact that this recruitment process is currently underway.
But
What's
also,
what's
I was
gonna
going to
go on.
just add there while we're talking on that line is that if there are anybody in the audience that are interested, we can actually put together what we call a discovery day online, where they can book on, and then I can talk them through exactly what's involved. Not
Okay.
a problem.
So if listeners require further information on that, please feel free to. I suppose if they just phone Bilston's Road
Well,
Police
they can
Station and ask for
actually-
your name.
Yeah, well, there's only one Rani in the West Midlands Police, so
That's right.
that won't take long to work out. But I can certainly leave my contact details with yourself, and then anybody who's interested.
By all means, of course.
Obviously, we can arrange that for a future
So,
date.
and if you want to get through to the Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton website as well, or email us, then we can certainly pass on your contact details on to PC Rani Gundu, and she will be able to then support you with that. I was just thinking, is everything in the police about Bobby's beating the streets? Is it just about police, or are there other careers and other vocations within the police force that people can join?
Well, even for myself, in the 34 years, I can confidently say there's not many departments that I haven't worked in. So there's a phenomenal amount of opportunities. Everybody's got just as much equality in applying for those different roles. So some people, during your training period, shall we say, because we didn't finish off that, you once you've got through all the assessments, you will go on to a 3-year training program. And that 3-year training program actually is an apprenticeship. An apprenticeship will allow you to study thereon for a degree in policing. And you will be actually a student with Stafford University, and that's all funded by the police as part of your training program. So you will have a 3-year apprenticeship journey. You will study with Stafford University. They will deal with all your portfolio, your actual academia side, and the actual practical side, and monitoring that your progress is done by the policing world. During that 3 years, you will actually earn approximately £70,000. So not only will you be having 3 years of training, plus this experience, skills, knowledge and abilities that will enhance your prospects moving forward, but you will also have secured a policing degree. Now that, for many people, especially if you could never afford to go on to university, you will get the best of both worlds. And also, reflectively, in this day and age, even if you went to study at university, got a degree, you've still got to leave and come out and find a job. Whereas this way, again, you're getting the best of both worlds. And during that 3-year journey, 18 months, if you've got actual ability to excel, whether you want to accelerate to go through promotion, etc., you can start to look at fast track, which is the fast track to get promoted as soon as possible, and that is doable. So 3 years journey, you can secure a degree, and you can also sit your sergeant's exam, which is the first rank that you can go for. And normally those sergeant's exams are taken in the autumn, so whichever time of the year that you've actually joined, the first autumn thereafter, normally about October time, you can take your sergeant's exam. And within 3 years, 3 to 4 years, you could, on the straight regular routing, you could become a sergeant, or on the fast track, in that sort of time, you could become an inspector. So the opportunities are very, very high. And then once you're doing your training, you will go on a rota. Generally speaking, they're about 12 to 15 weeks, but it is variable. You will go on a rota, you will work on the frontline uniform on response. Then they'll move you on to, say, the public protection unit. From there, they could move you on to the neighbourhood. And then from there, they could move you on to the investigations. And throughout that, it is very intense, ongoing learning all the time. But the value, the experience that you get is phenomenal. So when I reflect that to when I joined, not only did we have no support whatsoever, there was nothing. There was only one Rani in the organisation anyway. And, going on a pre-COVID, you would go to an assessment centre, but because of the COVID guidelines, all last year everything went online. So all these assessments are actually done online in your own, environment, comfortable at home. You're not even going to an assessment centre. So with the support that's offered at the moment, you are in a very good place if you are seriously at those crossroads or undecided of what you want to do, or in your final year of your A-levels and looking towards, because you can actually apply now at 17, but you won't get hired until you're 18.
That's excellent. That's very in-depth, Rani. I must say, you certainly have remembered a lot of details there, and it's because you're working so closely with the recruitment and supporting that, of course. Listeners, this is 87.9 FM, Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton. We're in the last few minutes of our show now in conversation with Yusuf Shafi. We've learnt a lot about community policing and how community policing could change your life if you were to become a part of it. And so I'm sure listeners will reflect on that. Rani, from your point of view, we're coming to the last few minutes of that. Are there any key messages that you want to put out to the community? You've mentioned a lot about the recruitment. We haven't gone into other issues of crime and criminality, which we could have done, but unfortunately time hasn't allowed for that. So any key messages that you want to really put out there to the community and with regards to what you've been telling us about today?
Right. I focus mainly on the adults that could potentially consider policing as a career, but do not forget 13 to 17-year-olds. We also have the cadet scheme. So if anybody's interested in joining the cadets, it's not about you wanting to join the police. It's about for you to look at all the different opportunities with working with our communities, being a responsible citizen and a good citizen too. And the key message I would say to you is, don't let your fears define you, let your courage define you. And no candle loses its light by lighting another candle.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Rani Gundu, QPM. I now turn to our other guest, Arten, Refugee and Migrant Centre, Chief Executive Officer. Any last messages you want to send out to our listeners?
The only thing I want to say is, first of all, thank you for having me. And second, obviously, Ramadan Mubarak to all my Muslim sisters and brothers and my many, many friends and colleagues.
Thank you very much. Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton is your voice. It's your opportunity to learn and listen about how our community, being a confident, successful community in Wolverhampton, is able to take part and learn and engage with civic society, how to get help, how to get support, and how to understand how to make and find our way in life. The radio station is here to showcase the work of good organisations and charities like the Refugee and Migrant Centre. It's here to showcase the work of good individuals. We had our guest Zahid Shah, who's unfortunately had to go, and also of wonderful colleagues and supportive friends like Rani Gundu, who are from the police force. The aim of the station is to enable, to inspire, to entertain, and to inform. And through that, we wish to make sure that the community are able to empower themselves to become stronger and more confident people amongst our wonderful city of Wolverhampton. My name is Yusuf Shafi. We've got a couple of minutes left before the end of the show, and I want to close now on a wonderful nasheed, which will take you to the break, and after the break then we'll go to the Iftari transmission. So may Allah bless you all, a happy Ramadan to you all, may it be prosperous, and may you all be well and secure in your homes. Let's put on the nasheed.
The wind to the trees, to the buzzing of the bees. Ya Rabbil Alameen, your creation is
Bi amanallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you next week for more In Conversation with Yusuf Shafi.
Your beauty isn't seen, Ya Rabbi, please accept my prayer. Ya Rabbil Alameen, Ya Rahmanu Ya Rahim, Ya Rabbil Alameen. رسول الله عليه صلاة الله عليه بركات الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله عليه صلاة الله الإحسان. ربي بارئ الأكوان، إلهي ليس لك مثيل، كل عجز عن التمثيل. خلقتني من عدم إلى وجود، أنت ربي دائما أنت المعبود.